I never thought I'd see my daughter's name listed as the plaintiff on legal documents aimed at declaring me mentally incompetent. Yet there it was, in cold black print. Patricia Winters versus Margaret Wilson. My own flesh and blood. The little girl I had nursed through countless fevers and heartbreaks was now telling the state of Oregon that her 73-year-old mother was no longer capable of managing her own affairs. "Mrs. Wilson, please understand that this isn't personal," said the sleek young man in the charcoal suit who had served me the papers right on my front porch. "Your daughter is concerned about your welfare." I stood perfectly still in the doorway of the colonial home Robert and I had scrimped and saved for, the one where Patricia had taken her first steps, where we'd measured her growing height against the kitchen door frame. For 45 years, this house had been more than walls and a roof. It was the physical embodiment of our family's story. "My welfare," I repeated, my voice steadier than I felt. How thoughtful of her. The server shifted uncomfortably. He was too young to recognize the dangerous calm in my tone, the kind that comes after 7 decades of weathering life's storms. I took the papers without another word and closed the door. My hands trembled as I spread the documents across my kitchen table, the same oak table where Patricia had done her homework, where Robert and I had planned our modest vacations, where I'd sat alone after his funeral 8 years ago, wondering how to go on. I reached for my reading glasses and forced myself to understand exactly what my daughter was trying to do. The legal language was deliberately intimidating, but I'd worked as a school administrator long enough to cut through bureaucratic nonsense. What it boiled down to was simple. Patricia was claiming I was showing signs of dementia and couldn't make sound financial decisions. She was petitioning the court to become my legal guardian with full control over my assets, including my house. My house. The house now worth over $850,000 in Portland's booming market. The same house that Patricia's husband Derek had casually suggested I sell just last month, so they could invest the proceeds in his latest scheme, some cryptocurrency platform that would supposedly revolutionize online shopping. When I'd firmly refused, Derek had smiled that slippery smile of his and said, "Just thinking about your future, Margaret. That's a lot of house for one person to manage." Now I understood what that smile meant. The kettle whistled sharply, startling me back to the present. I made my tea methodically. 1 bag of Earl Grey, a splash of milk, no sugar. The way I had every afternoon for decades. Outside my kitchen window, the Japanese maple Robert and I had planted on our 10th anniversary blazed red against the October sky. 40 years that tree had stood, its roots as deep in this soil as mine. I didn't realize I was crying until a tear splashed onto the legal papers. Not heaving sobs. I'd never been one for dramatic displays, but the quiet, steady tears of a woman who thought she knew the depth of betrayal, only to discover a new, uncharted level. The doorbell rang again. For a moment, I considered not answering, but years of proper manners won out. I wiped my eyes, straightened my cardigan, and opened the door to find my 16-year-old grandson Lucas standing there, his backpack slung over one shoulder, his lanky frame seeming to fold in on itself with teenage awkwardness. "Grandma," he said, his voice cracking, "I needed to see you." One look at his face told me everything. "You know about the lawsuit." He nodded, his eyes, so like Patricia's once were, before they hardened with ambition and Derek's influence, filling with shame. "Mom doesn't know I'm here. Dad took her phone shopping to celebrate filing the papers. He said," Lucas swallowed hard, "he said they'd be moving in here by Christmas." The calculated cruelty of it stole my breath. Not just the betrayal, but the timing, planning to take my home during the holidays when the grief of missing Robert always hit hardest. "Come in," I said, stepping aside. "I made cookies yesterday. Chocolate chip." Lucas followed me to the kitchen, his shoulders hunched. At the table, he stared at the legal documents, then at me. "Grandma, they're saying you can't remember things, that you leave the stove on, that you get confused about money, but it's all lies." His voice broke. "Dad made Mom believe you need to be protected from yourself." I sat down across from him, my hands folded tightly together to keep them from shaking. "And what do you believe, Lucas?" "I know what I see. You're sharper than most of my teachers." He pulled out his phone. "And I have proof they're lying. Dad's been recording their conversations about getting your house. I found the files on his laptop when he asked me to fix it. My clever, ethical grandson had evidence." A tiny flame of hope ignited in my chest. "Lucas," I said carefully, "what your parents are doing, it's going to change everything. Are you prepared for that?" He looked up at me, suddenly seeming older than his 16 years. "They've already changed everything, Grandma. Dad's turned Mom into someone I don't recognize anymore. This isn't about protecting you. It's about that stupid investment opportunity he can't shut up about." I reached across the table and took his hand. "Then I think it's time I made a phone call to an old friend." As Lucas bit into a cookie, I walked to the small desk in my living room and pulled out an address book. Not digital, but a worn leather book filled with decades of handwritten entries. I ran my finger down to S and found the number I needed. Henry Sullivan, my neighbor for 30 years before he moved to a retirement community last spring. A retired attorney who still had connections throughout Portland's legal community. Looking back at Lucas in my kitchen, this child brave enough to stand against his own parents for what was right, I felt something shift inside me. The shock and hurt were still there, but now joined by something stronger, something with steel at its core. My daughter thought I was a helpless old woman, ripe for manipulation. Her husband saw me as nothing but an obstacle to financial gain. They believed I would crumble in the face of their legal maneuvering. They had badly, catastrophically underestimated Margaret Wilson. I picked up the phone and dialed Henry's number. When he answered, I spoke without preamble. "Henry, it's Margaret. I need your help. My daughter is trying to take my house." At that moment, as my oldest friend promised to come over immediately, I made a silent vow. This house, this home, would become the battlefield for the most important fight of my life. And unlike what Patricia and Derek believed, I wasn't going down without a fight. In fact, I was just getting started. Hey there, if you're enjoying this story so far, make sure to hit that subscribe button. I'd love to have you join me for the journey ahead. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next in this family betrayal. Henry arrived within the hour, still spry at 78 with his silver hair and trademark bow tie. The moment he sat at my kitchen table and reviewed the papers, his face darkened. "This is outrageous, Margaret. These allegations about your mental capacity are completely fabricated." He looked up, his blue eyes sharp behind his glasses. "But they're also dangerous. Courts tend to be cautious with elderly petitioners, sometimes overly so." Lucas sat silently beside me, fidgeting with his phone. "I have the recordings," he said quietly. "Dad talking about using Mom to get control of Grandma's house." Henry's eyebrows shot up. "That could be crucial evidence, son, but also puts you in a difficult position. Are you prepared to testify against your parents, if necessary?" The weight of that question hung in the air. My heart broke, watching my grandson face such an impossible choice. He was just 16, yet here he was, forced to be braver than adults, twice his age. "They're not acting like my parents," Lucas finally said. "The Mom I knew would never do this." I squeezed his hand. "Patricia wasn't always like this. Before Derek—" I couldn't finish. Henry nodded grimly. "I've seen this pattern before. Financial manipulators often isolate their marks from family who might see through them." He tapped the papers. "Derek's using your daughter to get to your assets. Classic elder exploitation technique." "What do we do?" I asked. "First, we need a specialized attorney. Someone who exclusively practices elder law." He pulled out his phone. "Sophia Chen, best in Oregon, tough as nails. She was my mentee before I retired." As Henry made the call, arranging an emergency meeting for the next morning, I glanced around my kitchen. The copper pots hanging above the island that Robert had installed himself. The handprint artwork Patricia had made in 2nd grade, still framed by the pantry. The chair where my husband had eaten breakfast every morning for 40 years. This wasn't just real estate. This was my life. "Margaret," Henry said after hanging up, "we need to document your mental competency immediately. Sophia's arranging for a geriatric psychiatrist to evaluate you before the hearing. I'll do whatever it takes. And Lucas," Henry turned to my grandson, "we need to secure those recordings somewhere safe. Can you transfer them without your father noticing?" Lucas nodded. "Already did. Cloud backup with encryption. Dad might know computers for his scams, but I actually pay attention in my programming class." For the first time that day, I felt a spark of something beyond despair. Hope, perhaps, or maybe just the cold determination to fight. "They think I'm a confused old lady," I said softly. "That's their first mistake." "It'll be their last," Henry assured me, patting my hand. "Now let's prepare for tomorrow." After Henry left, Lucas stayed for dinner. I made his favorite meatloaf, working in the kitchen that Patricia now coveted. As we ate, Lucas showed me screenshots of text messages between his parents. "Look at this one," he said, sliding his phone across the table. "From 3 weeks ago." The message from Derek to Patricia read, "Once we get control of the house, we can leverage it for the investment. Your mom won't need that much space in assisted living anyway." My fork clattered against my plate. Assisted living? I've never once discussed moving to a facility. Lucas's face was grim. They've already researched places, the cheapest ones. The betrayal burned like acid. I had sacrificed everything for Patricia. Worked 2 jobs after Robert's heart attack left us with medical bills, postponed my own master's degree to pay for her college, celebrated every small victory in her life. Now she was planning to warehouse me while her husband squandered my home's equity. "I'm staying here tonight," Lucas announced as we washed dishes. "I told them I'm at Jason's house for a group project." I should have protested, reminded him that lying to his parents wasn't right. But tonight, the normal rules didn't apply. Nothing felt right anymore. Later, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I heard Lucas's voice from the guest room, speaking softly on the phone. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was urgent, determined. He was risking everything: his relationship with his parents, his home stability, for justice, for me. The gravity of what lay ahead settled over me like a weighted blanket. Tomorrow would begin a battle that would either save my home or tear my family apart forever. Perhaps it was already torn. Wait, before we continue this story, I want to invite you to join our exclusive group where you'll get access to special stories without any ads, directly on your phone, no internet required. Just check the pinned comment below. Now, let's get back to what happens when I meet the attorney. Sophia Chen's office exuded competence. Minimalist furniture, awards discreetly displayed, and a view of downtown Portland through rain-speckled windows. The attorney herself matched her surroundings, crisp, elegant, and laser-focused. "Mrs. Wilson," she said after reviewing my case file, "what your daughter and son-in-law are attempting is textbook predatory behavior. Unfortunately, it's also increasingly common." "Can they win?" I asked, clutching my purse in my lap. "They might have, if you hadn't come to me." Sophia's confidence was reassuring. Courts tend to err on the side of caution with elderly petitioners, which sometimes means restricting autonomy unnecessarily. But with proper evidence of your competency and their ulterior motives, we can fight this. Lucas shifted in his chair beside me. We'd told Patricia he was helping me with grocery shopping. Another lie in our growing collection. "I have the recordings," he said, sliding a USB drive across the desk. Sophia raised an eyebrow. "And you're willing to go on record with this evidence?" My grandson straightened his shoulders. "Yes, you should understand the repercussions," she cautioned. "This will permanently alter your relationship with your parents. They already destroyed it," Lucas replied, his voice cracking slightly. "My dad is trying to steal from my grandmother, and my mom is helping him." Sophia nodded, then turned back to me. "Mrs. Wilson, we need to understand what we're up against. Has Patricia always been susceptible to manipulation, or is this new behavior?" The question pierced my heart. I'd been avoiding this painful examination, but now I had no choice. Patricia was always eager to please, even as a child, I began. After her father died, she seemed to seek male approval more intensely. Derek is her 3rd husband, and each has been progressively more controlling. "Classic target profile," Sophia murmured, making notes. "And your relationship before Derek? We were close. Sunday dinners, holiday traditions. She'd call just to chat." I swallowed hard. That stopped about 2 years ago. Derek always had reasons why they couldn't visit. Eventually, they only came when they needed something. Financial assistance? Increasingly larger amounts. First for Lucas's school programs, then for car repairs, then for Derek's business ventures. I sighed. The requests stopped after I refused to help with his cryptocurrency scheme last month. Sophia tapped her pen thoughtfully. And that's when the competency concerns suddenly appeared. "Exactly. We have a strong case, Mrs. Wilson, especially with Lucas's evidence." Sophia leaned forward. "But I want to discuss another strategy, one that might not just win the case, but help your daughter escape this situation." My heart leapt. "You think that's possible?" "I've seen it before." The court battle becomes the wake-up call. She spread several documents before me. "We'll petition, not just to dismiss their case, but to have the court recognize Derek's coercive control over Patricia. We'll request financial protection for both you and potentially her. For the first time since receiving those dreadful papers, I felt a flicker of hope, not just for my house, but for my daughter. As we finalized our strategy, my phone buzzed with a text from Patricia. Just checking in. Are you taking your medications properly? The supposedly concerned message, clearly meant to establish a record of my alleged forgetfulness, made my blood boil. I showed it to Sophia. Perfect, she said with a grim smile. Keep those coming. They're digging their own grave. As we left the office, Lucas walking protectively beside me, I noticed a young woman working at her computer in the reception area. She couldn't be more than 20, with bright blue hair and a compassionate smile. That's my granddaughter, Zoe, Sophia explained, following my gaze. Pre-law student working part-time here. She specializes in our social media outreach for elder rights education. Zoe waved. Grandma's taught me everything about protecting seniors from financial exploitation. It's literally epidemic level in America right now. Looking at this bright young woman standing firmly in her grandmother's corner, I felt a pang of what might have been with Patricia. But I also realized something important. There were still young people who valued their elders, who recognized our worth beyond material assets. The court date is in 3 weeks, Sophia reminded me as we left. Until then, document everything. And Margaret, stay strong. You're not just fighting for your house. You're fighting for every elderly parent being taken advantage of. I'm sharing this difficult part of my journey from Portland, Oregon, and I'm 73 years old. If you're watching this and can relate to my story, please drop a comment telling me where you're from and your age. And if you're finding value in this series, don't forget to hit that like button. Your support means everything during this challenging time. The next morning, the doorbell rang promptly at 9. Dr. Elaine Morales, the geriatric psychiatrist Sophia had arranged, stood on my porch with a leather briefcase and a kind smile. Mrs. Wilson, I'm here to conduct your cognitive assessment, she explained as I invited her in. This will be thorough, approximately 3 hours of various tests and evaluations. I led her to the dining room, where I'd prepared coffee and set out a neat stack of my financial records, household bills, and medical documents, all meticulously organized and up to date. Dr. Morales raised an eyebrow. You've come prepared. I was a school administrator for 30 years, doctor. Organization is second nature. She smiled. That's already telling. The evaluation was exhaustive. Memory tests where I had to recall lists of words and repeat them backward. Problem-solving exercises involving pattern recognition. Questions about current events, history, and practical matters, like how I managed my medications and finances. Tell me about your daily routine, Dr. Morales requested. I described my morning walks, my volunteer work at the library twice weekly, my book club meetings, and the online course in digital photography I was taking through Portland Community College. And your financial management? I showed her my perfectly balanced checkbook, my investment portfolio statements, and the spreadsheet where I tracked every expense. I explained how I'd refinanced the mortgage 5 years ago to a better rate, paid off the remaining balance with part of Robert's life insurance, and now owned the house free and clear. Mrs. Wilson, Dr. Morales said after 3 hours of assessment, I've conducted thousands of these evaluations. Your cognitive function is not only normal for your age, it's exceptional. Your executive functioning and memory scores are comparable to those of many of my patients in their 50s. Relief washed over me. So, you'll testify to that effect? Absolutely. In fact, I'll state in my report that any claim of cognitive impairment appears completely unfounded and potentially malicious. She closed her briefcase. May I ask, do you have any idea why your daughter would make these claims? My son-in-law wants my house, I said simply, and he's convinced Patricia I'm no longer capable of managing it. Dr. Morales' expression hardened. Unfortunately, I see this scenario with increasing frequency. Adult children exploiting elderly parents for financial gain. She handed me her card. If you need anything else before the hearing, call me directly. After she left, I sat in my kitchen, staring at the business card. The validation felt bittersweet. While I was relieved to have expert confirmation of my competence, the fact that I needed it at all to defend myself against my own daughter was heartbreaking. My phone rang. Patricia. I took a deep breath before answering. Hello, dear. Mom, I'm stopping by in an hour to take you to lunch, she announced, her tone artificially bright. There's a new restaurant downtown I think you'll love. This sudden invitation, after weeks of minimal contact, was suspicious. Patricia hadn't taken me to lunch since before filing the lawsuit. "That sounds lovely," I said, matching her false cheerfulness. "But I have plans with the doctor today." "Doctor? Are you ill?" The concern in her voice might have seemed genuine to anyone who didn't know she was actively trying to have me declared incompetent. Just a regular checkup. Nothing to worry about. The lie came easily. Necessary protection in this new reality where my daughter had become an adversary. "I'll reschedule then. Maybe tomorrow?" "Tomorrow works," I agreed, buying time to consult with Sophia. After hanging up, I immediately called my attorney. Her advice was clear. Go to lunch. Record everything. Be pleasant but vague. Don't mention the case or the cognitive assessment. The next day, Patricia arrived driving a new Mercedes SUV I'd never seen before. When I commented on it, she waved dismissively. "Just a lease. Derek got a great deal through a business contact." As we drove to an upscale restaurant in the Pearl District, Patricia chatted about inconsequential things. The weather, a movie she'd seen, Lucas's school activities. Not once did she mention the lawsuit hanging over our heads, the fact that she was actively trying to take my home, or that she'd accused me of mental decline. The restaurant was trendy and expensive, with exposed brick walls and artisanal everything. As we studied the menus, Patricia casually asked, "Mom, have you been taking your blood pressure medication regularly? You sometimes forget." I had never been prescribed blood pressure medication. "I don't have high blood pressure, Patricia," I replied calmly, though my heart was racing. My last physical showed perfect readings, just like the 20 before it. She blinked rapidly. "Oh, I must be thinking of Aunt Helen then." My sister Helen had died 3 years ago from cancer. She'd never had hypertension either. Throughout lunch, Patricia peppered me with similar questions, each designed to elicit confused responses or memory lapses. "Remember when we got lost in Seattle last summer? We hadn't been to Seattle in over a decade. Have you paid your property taxes this year? I know dates confuse you sometimes." I'd paid them in April, on time, as always. Each trap was laid carefully, but I navigated around them, keeping my responses measured and accurate. All the while, my phone recorded every word in my purse, as Sophia had instructed. When Patricia dropped me at home, she hugged me tightly, something she hadn't done in months. "I love you, Mom. We just want what's best for you." I returned the embrace, wondering if any part of my real daughter remained beneath Derek's influence. "I love you too, Patricia. I always have." As her car disappeared down the street, I stood on my porch, staring at the home she was trying to take from me. 3 more weeks until the hearing. 3 weeks to prepare for the fight of my life. The courthouse loomed ahead, its stone facade imposing against the gray Portland sky. Lucas walked beside me, his lanky frame hunched against the drizzling rain. Sophia Chen strode confidently on my other side, carrying a sleek leather portfolio. "Remember," she advised quietly, "let me do most of the talking. Answer questions directly but briefly. Don't engage emotionally if Patricia or Derek attempt to provoke you." I nodded, clutching my purse with white knuckles. Inside was the small leather-bound notebook Robert had given me on our last anniversary, my talisman of strength for today's battle. The courtroom was smaller than I'd imagined, with polished wooden benches and the subtle scent of lemon furniture polish. As we took our seats, I saw Patricia and Derek enter with their attorney, a slick-looking man with an expensive suit and an aggressive stride. Patricia wouldn't meet my eyes. Derek, however, stared directly at me, his expression a mixture of contempt and anticipation. When he noticed Lucas sitting beside me, his face darkened with fury. "What the hell is he doing here?" Derek hissed loudly enough for us to hear. Patricia tugged his sleeve, whispering urgently. Their attorney leaned in, speaking in hushed tones that nevertheless carried the unmistakable sound of damage control. Judge Eleanor Kimball entered, a stern-looking woman in her 60s with silver-streaked dark hair and penetrating eyes. After the formalities, Patricia's attorney presented their case, painting me as a confused elderly woman whose concerning behaviors necessitated intervention. "Mrs. Wilson frequently forgets appointments, leaves appliances running, and has demonstrated poor financial judgment," he claimed smoothly. "Her daughter only wants to ensure her mother's safety and security in her golden years." When Sophia rose to speak, her transformation was remarkable. Her calm, professional demeanor sharpened into something formidable. "Your Honor, This case isn't about protecting an elderly parent. It's about a predatory son-in-law using his wife to gain control of valuable real estate. She paused, letting the accusation land. We have evidence proving Mrs. Wilson is not only fully competent, but that this petition was filed with explicitly fraudulent intent. The judge's eyes narrowed. That's a serious allegation, counselor. With serious evidence to support it, Your Honor. Sophia presented Dr. Morales' evaluation first, detailing my exceptional cognitive function. She then submitted my financial records, showing meticulous management. But the bombshell came when she introduced Lucas's recordings. Your Honor, we have audio evidence of the petitioners discussing their true intentions regarding Mrs. Wilson's property. Derek's attorney jumped to his feet. Objection! Any such recordings would have been obtained without my client's knowledge or consent. Oregon is a one-party consent state for recordings, Sophia countered smoothly. And these recordings were legally obtained. The judge permitted the evidence. As Derek's voice filled the courtroom, once we get control of the old lady's house, we can cash out and finally fund the business. Patricia seemed to physically shrink in her seat. Another recording played, Derek coaching Patricia on what symptoms to report to the court. When Lucas was called to testify, my heart nearly stopped. My 16-year-old grandson walked to the witness stand, shoulders back, facing not only the judge but his parents. Lucas, Sophia began gently, can you tell the court why you decided to record these conversations? Lucas's voice trembled slightly but held firm. About 3 months ago, I overheard my dad telling my mom that my grandmother's house was their ticket out of debt. When I asked what he meant, he said Grandma was getting too old to live alone, and they were helping her transition to assisted living. Did you believe this was true? No. Lucas looked directly at his mother, who was now silently crying. I spend more time with Grandma than they do. She's completely independent. She helps me with my calculus homework. Derek's attorney cross-examined aggressively, suggesting Lucas was manipulated by me, that he was a troubled teen seeking attention. But Lucas remained composed, answering truthfully about his parents' escalating financial problems and Derek's desperate search for investment capital. When it was my turn to testify, I felt a strange calm. Decades of handling school board meetings and difficult parent conferences had prepared me for this moment. Mrs. Wilson, the judge asked directly, do you understand why we're here today? Yes, Your Honor. My daughter and son-in-law want control of my house, which is worth approximately $850,000 in the current market. Since I refused to sell it to fund my son-in-law's business venture, they're attempting to have me declared incompetent. Mrs. Wilson, Derek's attorney began his cross-examination with a condescending smile. Isn't it true that you've been increasingly forgetful in recent months? Perhaps misplacing items or forgetting conversations? No more than anyone occasionally does, I replied evenly. I've never forgotten anything significant, and I certainly haven't forgotten that my son-in-law asked me to sell my home 3 times in the past year. A few spectators in the courtroom chuckled. The attorney's smile tightened. Your daughter reports finding the stove left on during a visit in March. Do you recall that incident? I recall Patricia claiming she found the stove on, yes. Curiously, that claim came the day after I declined to give Derek $30,000 for his investment scheme. I met the judge's eyes. I've cooked on that stove for 45 years without incident. He switched tactics. Mrs. Wilson, managing a large home alone at your age can be challenging. Wouldn't you agree that downsizing might be sensible? If and when I decide to downsize, counselor, it will be my decision, and the proceeds will go to my retirement, not to cryptocurrency speculation. After several more failed attempts to rattle me, the attorney retreated. Judge Kimball called a brief recess before closing arguments. In the hallway, I noticed Patricia standing alone by a window, arms wrapped around herself. Against Sophia's cautionary glance, I approached my daughter. Patricia, I said softly. She turned, her face a mask of conflicting emotions. Mom, Mrs. Wilson, Derek interrupted, suddenly appearing beside Patricia. Our attorney advises against communication during recess. Patricia fell silent, but not before I glimpsed something in her eyes, doubt perhaps, or shame. Sophia delivered a powerful closing argument, systematically dismantling the false narrative of my supposed incompetence while highlighting the documented evidence of Derek's financial motives. She ended with a surprising request. Your Honor, we ask not only that this petition be dismissed, but that the court consider whether Mrs. Winters herself may be subject to undue influence and financial coercion from her husband. The evidence suggests a pattern of isolation and manipulation that extends beyond Mrs. Wilson to her daughter. Derek's attorney objected vehemently, but the damage was done. Judge Kimball was already studying Patricia with new interest. When the judge delivered her ruling, her words were measured but firm. Based on the overwhelming evidence presented, I find no basis whatsoever for declaring Margaret Wilson incompetent. This petition is dismissed. She paused, looking directly at Derek. Furthermore, I am referring this case to the district attorney for potential investigation into elder exploitation. Mr. Winters, attempting to use the courts to gain control of your mother-in-law's assets through false claims is a serious matter. Relief flooded through me. I'd won. My home was safe. But looking at Patricia's devastated face, I wondered at what cost. As we prepared to leave, Lucas asked quietly, "Can I come stay with you for a while, Grandma? I don't think I can go home with them right now." Before I could answer, Patricia approached us, her expression stricken. "Lucas, please, you lied about Grandma." He cut her off, voice shaking. "You tried to take her house. How could you do that?" Derek grabbed Patricia's arm. "We're leaving. Now." Judge Kimball, who had been speaking with her clerk nearby, turned sharply. "Mr. Winters, I advise you to moderate your tone and behavior. You're still in my courthouse." Derek's face contorted with barely controlled rage, but he released Patricia's arm and stalked toward the exit. "Lucas can stay with me," I told Patricia gently, "just until things settle." She nodded mutely, tears streaming down her face. As she turned to follow Derek, Sophia stepped forward. "Mrs. Winters," she said, offering a business card, "when you're ready to talk about options, call this number. Help is available." Patricia stared at the card for a long moment before slowly taking it and slipping it into her pocket. Outside the courthouse, rain had given way to weak sunshine. Lucas walked beside me toward Henry's car, where our friend waited to drive us home. "We did it, Grandma," Lucas said, attempting a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "We won." I squeezed his hand. "We protected what needed protecting," I corrected gently. "But this isn't over, Lucas. Your mother is still your mother." That evening, as Lucas settled into the guest room that was fast becoming his own, I sat alone in my living room, surrounded by decades of memories. The victory felt hollow. I'd kept my house, but potentially lost my daughter in the process. My phone chimed with a text message. Unknown number. "Mom, it's me. On new phone Derek doesn't know about. Can we talk tomorrow?" Alone. Hope, fragile as a bird's wing, fluttered in my chest. If you've been following my journey and found strength in my story, please share it with someone who might need to hear it too. Sometimes the greatest gift we can give others is knowing they're not alone in their struggles. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. This story is far from over. I suggested meeting Patricia at a small cafe 10 blocks from my house, far enough from home that Derek wouldn't accidentally spot her car in my driveway, but close enough that I could walk there, giving me time to organize my thoughts. The cafe was quiet at 10 in the morning, just a few remote workers tapping on laptops and an elderly couple sharing a newspaper. I chose a corner table with a view of both the door and the street. Patricia arrived 5 minutes early, which surprised me. Punctuality had never been her strong suit, especially in recent years when Derek's perpetual emergencies meant she was chronically late to everything. She looked smaller somehow, wearing a plain sweater rather than her usual designer clothes, her hair pulled back simply. The carefully curated image Derek preferred was notably absent. "Mom," she said, sliding into the seat across from me. "Thank you for meeting me." I studied my daughter's face, the shadows under her eyes, the tension in her jaw. "How are you, Patricia?" She attempted a smile that crumbled almost immediately. I don't even know how to answer that. The server came for our order. Chamomile tea for me, black coffee for Patricia. When we were alone again, she pulled out her phone, tapped briefly, then set it face down on the table. "I'm recording this conversation," she said quietly. "For myself, not for Derek. I need to remember everything clearly." I nodded, waiting. "First, I need to say I'm sorry." Her voice broke slightly. What I did, was unforgivable. I don't expect your forgiveness. I just need you to know that I see now what happened." "What did happen, Patricia?" I kept my tone gentle, free of accusation. She took a shuddering breath. Derek convinced me you were declining. He'd point out normal things. You misplacing your reading glasses, forgetting a neighbor's name, and frame them as concerning patterns. She stared into her coffee. He'd say things like, "Your mom seems more confused today, did you notice?" Until I started seeing problems that weren't there. "And the house?" I prompted when she fell silent. "He started talking about it last year. At first, it was just suggestions about how the maintenance was too much for you, how you'd be happier in a smaller place." She looked up, shame evident in her eyes. "Then our financial situation got worse. Derek's last 2 business ventures failed. We're drowning in debt, Mom. The house became his fixation, the solution to everything." Our drinks arrived. I wrapped my hands around the warm mug, absorbing this confirmation of what we'd already largely pieced together. "Where is Derek now?" I asked. "At a meeting with potential investors. He doesn't know I'm here." Her hands trembled slightly as she lifted her cup. After the hearing, he was livid, broke a lamp, put his fist through the hallway wall. He blamed me for not being convincing enough, blamed Lucas for betraying the family. Alarm coursed through me. "Has he ever been violent toward you or Lucas?" "Not physically," she answered quickly. "It's more controlled rage, intimidation. He throws things, breaks things. Afterward, he's incredibly apologetic, loving even." She gave a hollow laugh. "Classic pattern, right? I should have recognized it. I'm a social worker, for God's sake." That was the cruel irony. Before meeting Derek, Patricia had worked at a women's resource center, helping others escape exactly the kind of situation she now found herself in. "Lucas isn't safe at home right now," she continued. "Thank you for giving him shelter. He's my grandson. You're my daughter. You both always have a place with me." Her eyes filled with tears. "I met with Sophia Chen yesterday. She's helping me understand my options." Hope bloomed in my chest. "And what are you thinking?" "I'm scared," she admitted. "Derek has access to all our accounts. My name is on his business loans. He's isolated me from most of my friends." She twisted her wedding ring anxiously. "But I've started taking steps. I opened a separate bank account. I'm gathering important documents. Sophia is helping me develop a safety plan." I reached across the table, covering her hand with mine. "Whatever you need, I'm here." "I know." She squeezed my hand. "That's what makes what I did even more horrible. You've always been there for me, and I repaid you by trying to take your home. You were manipulated, Patricia. I won't pretend it didn't hurt deeply, but I understand manipulation tactics. I've seen it happen to stronger people than you." We talked for nearly 2 hours. Patricia revealed more details about their financial troubles, far worse than I'd imagined, and Derek's increasingly controlling behavior. She'd been contemplating leaving for months, but couldn't see a path forward until the courthouse confrontation forced her to face reality. As our meeting ended, Patricia hugged me tightly. "I'll keep in touch through this phone. It's a prepaid one Derek doesn't know about. Be careful," I cautioned. "And remember, my door is always open." Watching her walk away, I felt a complicated mixture of emotions: relief that she was beginning to break free, fear for what challenges lay ahead, and cautious hope for eventual reconciliation. When I returned home, Lucas was in the kitchen making sandwiches for lunch. "I saw Mom's text," he said, eyes questioning. "How did it go?" I sat at the counter, suddenly feeling every one of my 73 years. "She's taking steps, Lucas. Small ones, but in the right direction." He nodded, processing this. "Is she going to leave him?" "I think so. But these things take time, and they need to be done carefully." "Can I see her?" "She'd like that. We'll arrange something safe." As we ate lunch, I realized this was just the beginning of a new chapter for our fractured family, one that would require patience, courage, and faith in each other. If this story resonates with you, please share it with someone who might need to hear it. Remember to subscribe so you don't miss what happens next in our journey of healing and rebuilding. Your support means everything during this challenging time. 2 weeks after my cafe meeting with Patricia, I received a call from Sophia Chen. "Margaret, are you sitting down?" Her typically composed voice carried an unusual urgency. "I am now," I said, settling into my armchair. "What's happened?" Derek found Patricia's prepaid phone and the documents she'd been gathering. There was a confrontation. "She's okay physically, but she left the house with just her purse." Sophia paused. "She's at my office now. She's asking if she can come stay with you." My heart raced. "Of course she can. Tell her to come immediately." "There's more," Sophia continued. "Derek made threats about ruining both of you. He specifically mentioned the house again and something about cashing in his insurance policy. We've already filed for an emergency restraining order, but I'm concerned about his state of mind. After arranging for Patricia to be driven to my home by Sophia's assistant, I called Henry to update him. Then I spoke with Lucas, who had been staying with me since the court hearing. "Mom's coming here?" His expression was a complex mix of relief and apprehension. "For good?" "For now," I answered carefully. "This is going to be a difficult transition for everyone, Lucas. Your mother is leaving everything behind." He nodded solemnly. "I'll clean up the guest room for her." An hour later, Patricia arrived, carrying only a small overnight bag. Her face was pale, her eyes red-rimmed. When Lucas opened the door, she froze momentarily before pulling him into a fierce hug. "I'm so sorry," she whispered into his hair, "for everything." Over tea at the kitchen table, Patricia explained what had happened. Derek had become increasingly erratic since the court hearing, obsessively tracking her movements and monitoring her phone. When he discovered her hidden preparations to leave, his fury had been terrifying. He kept saying I'd betrayed him, that after everything he'd done for me, this was how I repaid him. She stared into her mug. Then he said if I thought I could take his son and walk away, I had another thing coming. That's when I grabbed my purse and ran. "Did he follow you?" I asked. She shook her head. "I don't think so. I took a rideshare to Sophia's office directly." "We need to call the police," Lucas insisted. "Sophia's handling the legal aspects," Patricia explained. "The restraining order should be processed by morning. Derek won't risk his business reputation by violating a court order." I wasn't so sure. Men like Derek, when cornered, often became unpredictable. I made a mental note to ask Henry about additional security measures. That evening, as I prepared dinner, the three of us together in my kitchen for the first time in years, the weight of our situation settled over me. My home, which Derek had so desperately wanted to take from me, had now become a sanctuary for his wife and son. The irony wasn't lost on me. Patricia insisted on helping with dinner, though her cooking skills had always been minimal. As she awkwardly chopped vegetables beside me, I glimpsed the daughter I remembered. Before Derek, before the distance grew between us, "I've forgotten how to do the simplest things," she admitted, looking down at her uneven carrot slices. "You haven't forgotten," I assured her. "You just need practice." Later, after Lucas had gone to bed, Patricia and I sat in the living room with cups of herbal tea. The house creaked and settled around us, familiar sounds that had comforted me for decades. "I keep thinking about what would have happened if we'd won that court case," Patricia said quietly. "If we'd taken your house. Let's not dwell on what didn't happen." "But I need to." Her hands tightened around her mug. "Derek had already talked to a real estate agent about selling as soon as we got control. He said we'd move you into Pinewood Acres. I knew the place, a run-down assisted living facility on the outskirts of town, notorious for its minimal care and maximal fees. You would have lost your home," she continued, "and I would have remained trapped in that marriage, believing his lies about taking care of you." Her voice broke. Lucas was the only one brave enough to stand up for the truth. "You're standing up now," I reminded her. "That takes courage, too." The next morning, I awoke to the sound of movement in the kitchen. Wrapping my robe around me, I found Patricia making breakfast, slightly burnt toast, and oversteeped tea, but the effort touched me deeply. "I thought I'd try to remember how to cook something," she explained with a self-conscious smile. "It's not great. It's perfect," I assured her, accepting the plate. As we ate, my phone rang. Henry's name flashed on the screen. "Margaret," he said without preamble. "I just drove by your house on my way to my doctor's appointment. Derek's car is parked a block away. He's watching your place." A chill ran through me. "Are you sure it's him?" "Positive." I recognized the black Audi. He ducked down when he saw me drive past, but it was definitely Derek. I thanked Henry and hung up, explaining the situation to Patricia. Her face drained of color. "He's not supposed to be anywhere near us," she whispered. "The restraining order hasn't been served yet," I realized. Sophia said morning. It's only 7:30. We decided to call the police. While waiting for their arrival, I closed all the blinds and made sure the doors were locked. Lucas, now awake and alerted to the situation, kept glancing anxiously out the front window. "He's still out there," he reported, "just sitting in his car." When 2 police officers finally arrived, Derek's car was gone. They took our statement and promised to patrol the area regularly. But without the restraining order officially served, their options were limited. "We'll call if he returns," I assured them. and the order should be served today. After they left, Patricia's phone chimed with a text message. She checked it, then dropped the phone as if it had burned her. "What is it?" I asked. She turned the screen toward me, her hand trembling. The message was from Derek. "You can hide in Mommy's house for now, but remember, I always collect what I'm owed. Always." 3 days passed without further incident. The restraining order was officially served, barring Derek from coming within 500 feet of Patricia, Lucas, or my home. Sophia arranged for Patricia to access an emergency fund for domestic violence survivors, giving her some immediate financial independence. We settled into an uneasy routine. Lucas attended school, though I drove him rather than letting him take the bus, unwilling to risk Derek approaching him. Patricia began speaking with a therapist specializing in emotional abuse, sessions that often left her drained but resolute. I watched my daughter slowly reclaiming herself. Small things at first, like preparing meals without anxiously checking her phone every few minutes, or laughing genuinely at something Lucas said without immediately glancing around as if fearing reprimand. On Thursday afternoon, as Patricia and I were sorting through some of her childhood photographs I'd preserved, my home phone rang. "Mrs. Wilson?" An unfamiliar female voice spoke. "This is Zoe Chen, Sophia's granddaughter from the law office." "Yes, Zoe. Is everything all right?" "Not exactly." Her voice lowered. "I was organizing case files when I overheard something concerning. A man came to see another attorney in our building. He was asking about property liens and how quickly they could be processed without the homeowner's knowledge." I felt a prickle of unease. "And you think this man was Derek?" "I'm certain it was. I recognized him from your court hearing." Zoe hesitated. "Grandma's in court today, but I thought you should know immediately." After thanking her, I called Henry, who confirmed my suspicions. Derek was likely trying to file a fraudulent lien against my house, claiming I owed him money. While the attempt would ultimately fail, it could create a legal headache and temporarily cloud my title. "I'll call my contact at the county records office," Henry promised. "We'll flag your property to prevent any surprise filings." That evening, I explained the situation to Patricia and Lucas over dinner. Patricia pushed her food around her plate, eyes downcast. "This is all my fault," she murmured. "I brought him into our lives. You are not responsible for his actions," I said firmly. "The person who behaves abusively is always responsible for their choices." Lucas, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly spoke up. "There's something you both should know." He pulled out his phone. "Dad's been emailing me, trying to get me to come home. He says he's filing for full custody once the divorce happens." Patricia gasped. "He can't do that. Not after everything. He's threatening to use the recordings against you, Mom," Lucas continued. "Says he'll tell the court you were complicit in elder financial abuse and are an unfit parent. The cruel calculation of it, using a child's evidence meant to protect his grandmother as a weapon against his mother, left me speechless with anger. "He won't succeed," I finally said. "Those recordings clearly show he was the driving force. You were under duress." Patricia reached for her son's hand. "Lucas, I'm so sorry you're caught in the middle of this." "I'm not in the middle," he replied with unexpected firmness. "I'm with you and Grandma. I know what Dad is." Later that night, unable to sleep, I sat in my kitchen reviewing property documents Henry had advised me to gather. The ticking of the wall clock, a wedding gift to Robert and me from my parents, provided a steady rhythm as I worked. A sound from the backyard made me freeze, something metallic, like a gate latch clicking. Then footsteps on the garden path. I turned off the kitchen light and moved to the window, peering cautiously through the blinds. A figure was moving toward the back door, tall, male, dressed in dark clothing. My hand was already reaching for the phone when I heard a key turn in the lock. The back door swung open and Derek stepped into my kitchen. "Margaret," he said with eerie calm, "we need to talk." "How did you get a key?" I demanded, trying to keep my voice steady while calculating the distance to the drawer where I kept a small canister of pepper spray. "Patricia's keychain. I made a copy months ago." He smiled thinly. "Always have a backup plan." "You're violating the restraining order. I'm calling the police." I reached for the phone. "Before you do," he said, "you might want to consider your options carefully." Something in his tone made me pause. He reached into his jacket and removed a thick envelope, tossing it onto the table. "What's this?" "Insurance," he replied. "Open it." Inside were dozens of photographs, all of Patricia, all taken without her knowledge. Patricia entering her therapist's office, Patricia talking with Sophia, Patricia and I at the cafe. Interspersed were printouts of bank statements, emails, and what appeared to be medical records. I've been documenting Patricia's erratic behavior for months, Derek explained smugly. Building a case that she's unstable, vindictive, possibly even dangerous. If she pursues divorce or full custody, these go to the court. Her employer, her friends, everyone. Cold fury rose within me. This is blackmail. This is negotiation. He leaned forward. All I want is what I'm owed. Patricia promised to support my business ventures. Your house represents the capital I need. So this was never about my alleged incompetence, I said. It was always about money. Business, he corrected. Family business, which you're now disrupting. Get out of my house. He made no move to leave. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell Patricia and Lucas to come home where they belong. Then you're going to sell this house and provide the investment capital I need. In exchange, I won't destroy your daughter's reputation and career. Rage and fear battled within me, but decades of handling school crises had taught me to maintain outward calm in the most chaotic situations. I needed to think strategically. And if I refuse? Derek's expression hardened. Then Patricia loses everything. Her son, her career, her reputation. I've got testimonials from concerned friends about her drinking problem. She doesn't have a drinking problem. The court won't know that. He tapped the envelope. Documentation is very persuasive. As he spoke, I noticed movement in the hallway behind him. Lucas, wide-eyed, phone in hand, recording everything. Our eyes met briefly before he ducked back out of sight. I needed to keep Derek talking. How exactly would this arrangement work? I asked, forcing my voice to sound considering rather than appalled. Derek, sensing victory, began outlining his demands in greater detail, unaware that every word was being captured as evidence of extortion and violation of the restraining order. Behind him, I glimpsed Lucas, silently retreating upstairs, presumably to wake Patricia and call the police. All I needed to do was keep Derek distracted until help arrived. You seem to have thought of everything, I said, my tone deliberately ambiguous. Derek smiled, mistaking my statement for capitulation. I always do, Margaret. That's why I always win. Not this time, I thought, as distant sirens began to wail in the night. Derek's head snapped toward the window as the sirens grew louder. What did you do? He demanded, his smug composure fracturing. I didn't do anything, I replied calmly, but it appears my grandson did. Rage contorted his features. He lunged for the envelope of evidence, but I was faster, snatching it away and backing toward the hallway. You think this changes anything? Derek snarled. I have copies of everything. You can't stop me. Actually, we can, came Patricia's voice from the stairs. She stood there in her nightgown, phone in hand, Lucas beside her. The police are 2 minutes out, Derek, and we've just emailed them the video of you breaking into my mother's house and attempting to blackmail her. For a moment, Derek seemed to deflate, but then his expression hardened. He moved toward the back door. This isn't over. Yes, it is, I said, with quiet certainty. As he yanked open the door to flee, he found himself face to face with 2 police officers, their flashlights illuminating his startled face. Derek Winters? One officer asked. You're under arrest for violation of a restraining order, breaking and entering, and attempted extortion. What followed seemed to unfold in slow motion. Derek being handcuffed and read his rights, our statements taken in my living room, the envelope of evidence being bagged as proof of his harassment campaign. By dawn, exhausted but relieved, the 3 of us sat at my kitchen table drinking tea and processing the night's events. He kept such careful records of his own crimes, Patricia marveled, shaking her head. All those photos and fabricated testimonials, they're not evidence against me. They're proof of his stalking and harassment. Narcissists often document their activities, I said. They're so convinced of their own cleverness that they create roadmaps of their misconduct. Lucas, who had been quiet, suddenly looked up. Do you think he'll go to jail? Patricia rested her hand on his. I don't know, honey. But he won't be coming home, and he won't be making decisions for our family anymore. In our family, I repeated softly, feeling the weight and hope in those 2 simple words. In the weeks that followed, our lives began to transform. With Derek in custody and denied bail due to the severity of his threats, we could finally breathe. Patricia filed for divorce with Sophia's help, citing emotional abuse and coercion. The evidence from that night made the process remarkably straightforward. Lucas, freed from walking on eggshells in his own home, seemed to grow taller overnight. His grades improved, and he rejoined the school's robotics team, an activity Derek had dismissed as useless. Patricia faced the hardest journey. Years of gaslighting and emotional manipulation had left deep wounds. Some days were better than others. There were mornings when self-doubt paralyzed her, when Derek's voice in her head told her she was worthless without him. But there were also moments of breakthrough, like when she successfully negotiated a return to her old job at the Women's Resource Center, where her personal experience now added depth to her professional expertise. 6 months after that night in my kitchen, we gathered in the backyard for a small celebration. Henry was there, along with Sophia and her granddaughter Zoe, who had become a frequent visitor and something of a mentor to Lucas. The Japanese maple blazed red in the October sun, just as it had the day I'd received those court papers that started everything. "I have an announcement," Patricia said, raising her glass of sparkling cider. "The divorce is final as of yesterday, and—" She paused, smiling. "I've been approved for a small business loan. I'm opening a consulting practice specializing in financial literacy for women leaving abusive relationships." We toasted her courage and new beginning. Later, as the guests departed, Patricia lingered in the kitchen, helping me with dishes, a companionable ritual we'd established in our months of living together. "Mom," she said, handing me a plate to dry, "I've been looking at apartments." My heart sank a little. Though I knew this day would come, the thought of my kitchen without Patricia and Lucas brought an unexpected pang. "There's a 2-bedroom near my new office," she continued. "But before I commit," she hesitated. "Lucas has made it clear he wants to stay here with you through his senior year. He loves the stability, and with college applications coming up, he's always welcome," I assured her. "This is his home too." Patricia nodded, then added, "I was thinking, what if I didn't move out completely? What if I kept my room here, stayed some nights when work runs late, had my own place but remained connected to this?" She gestured vaguely, encompassing the kitchen, the house, our reconstituted family. "A foot in both worlds," I suggested. "Independence and connection." "Exactly." Her eyes welled with tears. "Is that possible?" "We get to decide what's possible now," I told her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "That's what freedom means." Later that evening, I sat alone on my porch swing, watching the sunset paint the sky in vibrant oranges and pinks. The house behind me stood solid and welcoming, just as it had for 45 years. Not just walls and a roof, but the heart of a family that had nearly been destroyed, yet somehow found its way back to love and trust. Derek had seen this house as nothing but a financial asset to be seized and exploited. In his desperate pursuit of it, he had lost everything that truly mattered: his family, his freedom, his future. I, by defending my home, had gained something far more precious than property: the return of my daughter, a deeper bond with my grandson, and the profound knowledge that some things, integrity, courage, family, cannot be bought, sold, or stolen. The Japanese maple rustled gently in the evening breeze, its roots deep and secure, its branches reaching skyward. Like us, I thought, weathered but standing, broken but healing, separate but connected. Home. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for joining me on this journey. If this story touched you in any way, please share it with someone who might need its message of hope and resilience. Remember to subscribe to our channel for more stories of courage and family healing. Your support has meant everything during this challenging time, and I'm grateful for each one of you who took the time to listen to my story. 1 year later, I stood in my backyard beside the Japanese maple, now adorned with twinkling lights for a special occasion. A small gathering of friends and family had assembled on the lawn where chairs were arranged in neat rows. Lucas, looking impossibly grown up in his suit, adjusted his tie nervously as he checked his watch. "She's late," he whispered. "Your mother is always late," I reminded him with a smile. "Some things never change." As if on cue, a car pulled into the driveway. Patricia emerged, resplendent in a simple blue dress, carrying a portfolio under her arm. Behind her came Sophia Chen, elegant as ever, and her granddaughter Zoe, who now worked part-time for Patricia's thriving consulting business while finishing law school. "Sorry we're late," Patricia called. "Last-minute client needed reassurance." The small crowd settled into their seats as Patricia took her place at the front. Today marked the official launch of the Wilson Family Foundation, our joint venture dedicated to providing financial education and housing assistance to survivors of economic abuse. 1 year ago, Patricia began, her voice clear and confident. I was trapped in a marriage where money was used as a weapon against me. My husband attempted to take my mother's home through legal manipulation. He nearly destroyed our family in his pursuit of profit. She paused, making eye contact with several women in the audience, clients of hers who had come to witness this moment. Today, we're transforming that painful experience into purpose. The Wilson Family Foundation will help women secure safe housing, understand their financial rights, and rebuild their economic independence. As she outlined the foundation's programs, I felt a profound sense of rightness. The house that Derek had tried so desperately to take from me was now headquarters for an organization that would help countless women protect their own homes and financial security. Lucas, now a freshman at Portland State studying computer science and business, had designed our website and database. Patricia, rediscovering her professional passion, ran day-to-day operations. I served as board chair, bringing decades of administrative experience to our governance. After the ceremony, as guests mingled in the backyard enjoying refreshments, Henry approached me with a newspaper in hand. "Thought you might want to see this," he said, pointing to a small article. Derek's sentencing was finalized yesterday. I scanned the brief report. 18 months for the breaking and entering, violation of restraining order, and attempted extortion, followed by 5 years probation. It seemed both significant and insignificant. Justice served, yet merely a footnote in the story our family was now writing. Later, as sunset painted the sky in familiar hues of orange and pink, I found myself again on the porch swing. Patricia joined me, 2 glasses of iced tea in hand. "Penny for your thoughts," she said, settling beside me. "I was just thinking about houses," I replied. "How they're more than structures. They're vessels for our stories, witnesses to our lives." Patricia nodded, looking out at the yard where Lucas was explaining something animatedly to Zoe, his hands gesturing enthusiastically. "You know," she said thoughtfully, "when I was married to Derek, I never felt at home, even in our expensive condo with all the designer furnishings. But here," she gestured to the weathered porch, the swing that Robert had hung decades ago, the simple comfort of our surroundings. "Here I always know exactly who I am." We swayed gently in the swing, mother and daughter reconnected, watching the next generation build something new on the foundation we had protected. The house stood behind us, solid and welcoming, not just a structure of wood and stone, but a testament to resilience, to fighting for what matters, to the enduring power of a home built on love rather than possession. In the end, what Derek had failed to understand was the simplest truth of all. A house is made of materials, but a home is made of memories, of courage, of choosing each other day after day. That was something no court could ever take away.